and welcome to Shop Talk. My name is Whitney and I am one of the hosts. I am from Thrifty Whitney on Instagram and my website, and I'll be joined shortly by Nicole and our special guest Melanie from Lost and Found Decor. If you have never watched Shop Talk before, this is our monthly live stream series where we bring in guests or Nicole and I chat about all the things selling vintage online. So the replay will be available, and I'm going to get our guest and this conversation because it's something a lot of you have been asking us about, is how do you run a business that is like a booth business in a mall and online. So hello Melanie.
Hi.
It's so good to see you.
Good morning.
All right, and Nicole should be here any second. I'm going to just put a little comment. If you guys are not able to watch the whole thing, or you do want to watch it again, I will post a replay on my YouTube channel. There will also be one on Instagram, but because these go for so long, sometimes it's kind of difficult to like watch them on Instagram. So YouTube is the best bet. So I'm just going to put a little comment on here. If you comment YouTube, you will automatically get a DM from me with a link to my YouTube channel. So let me put that in really quick. How are you doing today, Melanie?
I'm good. I'm a little tired because I was up late watching watching the news. So I was a political science major in college, so I just like nerd out.
Oh,
Like, it's like a reality show drama for me. I just get all excited.
oh man.
So I didn't get enough sleep last night. And I didn't think about the fact that this was going to be the next day. I didn't factor it into it.
It'll be fine.
We'll be good.
I was up late and I didn't sleep much, but that's because my daughter whacked my toddler in the face and gave her a bloody eye.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, trying like, do we need to go to the ER or
Yeah.
I think she just got like a corneal abrasion, so she was up crying a lot anyway. But I'm so glad you're here. We're here. I'm just looking for Nicole to join us. But why don't you go ahead, and if you want to just introduce us, tell us who you are, where you live, just introduce us to yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I want to super appreciate you being inviting me on here. I am tired, and sometimes when I'm tired, I just kind of ramble and I don't. So y'all give me a little break this morning. My name is Melanie. I own my business is called Lost and Found. I started my business when I was 6 months pregnant with my third little boy. So that was February of 2012, and that feels like eons ago. I do have 3 kids. They're now 18, 16, and 12. So my oldest is about to head off to college, which is another crazy thing. I live in Northwest Arkansas. When I started my business, I was in the suburbs of Dallas, and so I did business there until we moved in 2019. So I did business there for 7 years and then moved and have been doing business here for 5, right? That adds up to 12, I think. 7 and 5. Yeah. So 5 more years here. I started my business. I tell people I rented a booth space that was roughly the size of a jacuzzi bathtub. Like, if you can imagine that, your little standard garden, master bathroom, jacuzzi bathtub, that was about the size of my booth space. And it was just in the antique mall in my area that I loved shopping at. And I just really wanted to try selling some stuff. Hi. And
Sorry.
So it cost me $250 to start. That was 60 months, $60 of rent for my first month, plus some inventory, and I went from there. So started the business for $250. What other business can you start for $250? Like,
you can't even like start selling Mary Kay for that much. Right?
Oh no, and that was 12 years ago. So things changed in 12 years. But I will say I built an accidental business. I never intended for it to become this kind of full-time thing that it is, but it did, and I'm really super grateful for that because it has allowed me to have regular income that's flexible while I have been able to stay home with my kids, which was something important to me. And it's been a lot of fun. Like, it's just fun. You get to do what's fun. So I have a blog that I started about a year after I started the business, so that's been around for forever. That was back when I was a big Miss Mustard Seed fan, if anybody knows Miss Mustard Seed. So I just started blogging. I was painting furniture. I started selling a furniture paint line. Um, that blew up and became its own thing. So I was the painted furniture person for a long time. I have a YouTube channel that I started. I started it. It was kind of an accident. Like my husband would take some Facebook Live videos and dump them on YouTube. Like unbeknownst to me, he was doing that. And one of them kind of took off, and I turned around and had like 2,000 subscribers one day. And then during COVID, I was talking with a friend. She was like, "You should like work on your YouTube channel." And I was like, "Maybe I will." So I started making these YouTube videos, and that turned into this thing. And that's kind of how it's been. It's just been like, hey, let's try this. And then it becomes this thing that I didn't know I was now going to be doing. So I do a lot of different things. But the core of it has always been buying and selling old stuff that I like and find cool. And it's kind of built around that. The painted furniture world, when I started, those two worlds were really closely connected. I don't think they are so much anymore. They're kind of drifting apart. But when I first started in business, I mean, that was when chalk paint first hit the market. And so it was booth people that were selling the chalk paint, painting the furniture. All of that was kind of all wrapped up and together. And so that's been a big part of my journey too.
Okay, real quick, now that Nicole has joined in, if you guys tap right up here, it should pull down all of our users. Go up and follow. Definitely follow Melanie, follow Nicole. And if you love buying vintage, selling vintage, and then if you guys see the question box down below where there's like a bubble, speech bubble, thank you, Nicole, and it has a question mark, that is the best place to put your questions because the comment stream goes pretty fast and we try to keep an eye on it. But if you put it in the question box, it stays there. We also have a list of questions that we got in our stories before. Really good questions. I'm really excited to dive into this. So Nicole, can you introduce yourself too? We were already introduced ourselves before you got on.
Okay. Sorry, joining a little late. I'm Nicole from Vintage Haven Shop. I have been doing this since 2020. Mostly just on Instagram. I just recently opened an Etsy shop at the end of the year last year. I haven't really been uploading too much to it, but I'm like hopefully going to try to get into like a schedule with that. And I don't have a physical presence, so I have like a different outlook on this than the other two ladies.
All right, great. And then I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, so Melanie, I want to go back to because I think we got a question in our question box that was really kind of good, good for this. How did you know that it was time for you to open a booth? Because it's really interesting. Your journey is the opposite of mine, whereas I started selling online and then I started a booth. But I think most people start the booth first and then start selling online.
Yeah.
So basically, sorry, I'm trying to find that question because the way it was phrased was really good. What's a sign that you were ready to move into that booth?
Well, again, for me, nobody was like live sales didn't exist in 2012. People weren't doing that. And so the option for selling, even like Facebook Marketplace didn't exist. Like it was Craigslist was the place that you were selling. And that like always felt kind of shady and scary. So you didn't like want to run a business like that. So that was just when I started my business, that was how it was done. I can tell you that I have been out of a physical booth space since May because a tornado hit the mall where my location was, and it closed down my mall, the mall across the street, and another one down the road. And so I've been purely selling online for this summer. And I just moved back into 2 booth spaces. One is just very small. It's just basically my shelves of paint that I sell. The other one is where my vintage and antiques are going. They were supposed to open last week. Long story, it's been delayed a little bit. And I cannot wait to get back into a physical space. For me, moving the amount of vintage that I need to move online to pay myself a regular paycheck is a challenge. It's been a challenge for me this summer. because this is what I do full time. So like I pay myself roughly a teacher's salary every month, and I have since 2017. That's a lot of stuff to move online. And I like it's nobody is well for me to scale to that volume. Like you're talking a lot of volume or really high dollar items. And I've never been a person to sell high dollar antique. I'm more of a junk-teak person, just cool old stuff that I like and that I think people would be interested in decorating it. So for me, a booth space is a great additional revenue stream. Like I can move significantly more product in a booth space than I can online. So and because I run this as an actual business that I'm looking to pay myself a regular monthly paycheck, I need multiple revenue streams. I can't just do one thing. So I have a local revenue stream. I have an online revenue stream. I have ad revenue that I generate from my blog and from my YouTube channel. And then I have some other, like I get paid some sponsorship money. I've got lots of different things going, and all of that together comes into one pot. But that's what I need for me. And not everybody, like we talked about this when we had dinner, Whitney, not everybody's looking to do that. And that's fine. Some people want to, like when I started my business, I just wrote an email about this yesterday. My goal was to make enough money to take my kids to Disney World. That's what I wanted to do. My husband was working at a church full time. There was no way we were going to be able to afford that. My kids were little. I wanted to take them to Disney while they were little. And so I would cash my check. I would pay my first month's rent, set aside some money to buy inventory, and what was left went in a jar in the top of my closet. And I stuffed cash in that jar for 2 years until I had enough money to pay for Disney World. And in some months that was $50 that went in the jar. That was it. Some months it was $200 that went in the jar. But like that was my goal then. That's not my goal right now. Like I can't make $50 a month or $200 a month of profit, but that's what I wanted right then. So I think for the people that are watching this and anybody that I coach and work with, and most of them are women, like with, you don't have to be, if you're not here, fine. But a lot of them are. A lot of them are moms. A lot of them are people that are looking for something flexible. And so I asked the question, what do you have to have out of this? Like, what are you looking for? What does it have to do for you? Are you looking for hobby fun money? Like, are you looking to save up money to pay for a vacation? Great. Or are you like, no, I quit a job and I have to make a paycheck? Well, then you're gonna make different choices then, right? Your business journey, those are two different businesses. So what do you need this to do? And then two, what time do you have? If you're running a full-time job and you're looking for this vintage selling gig to produce side money, well, then you probably can't do a booth and online and a YouTube channel, right? Like you don't have time for that, and you don't need it because you got a full-time job paying your bills. So I think it's just important that everybody, like it's going to look different for everybody based upon what you're trying to do. And that's just my story. Like my story was my kids were little. They were 5, 3, and a baby. No, excuse me, 4, 2, and a baby when I started. And I was just home with them, and I was just looking to help the family and put a little bit of money aside and take a trip. And then it morphed into this thing where I realized I could pay myself. And then my husband lost his job and was out of work for 2 years. And that was the moment that I said, all right, I'm either going to go find like a job, which I wasn't really, like, I hadn't done. I had never done that. My kids were still, like, they were in school, but they got home at like 2:45 every day. And like, how's that going to work? Like, but we got to pay the mortgage and put food, on the table. So I either got to find a job, or I've got to make this work where I'm paying myself a paycheck every month. And that was when I made the shift where this became like a legitimate full-time business. But so I think people need to have those conversations with themselves. What do you need for this to do? If you need it to provide full-time level income, then I think, multiple revenue streams is a great option. Like running a booth, I ran my own brick and mortar store for 2 years. If you want to talk about taking up your time, like, man, that takes up your time. Mm-hmm. Like a booth, it takes up some time, but you take your stuff there, you drop it off, you go home, you forget about it, and they take care of everything else. So kind of like online, if you've got stuff listed on Etsy and it sells while you sleep, great. You can be selling stuff in a booth and generating revenue while you're off doing other things, right? So I think it can be a great option for somebody that's looking to kind of grow this, you know, and expand what they're doing.
Mm. Yes. I think what you said is key. You have to know your why.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Now, I was kind of the same as far as like an accidental business. Like, you know, I just started for funsies. And then before I knew it, I was absolutely in love with the entire business, not just the antiques and vintage, but the business. And it really has taken me 3 years. Like there's like two parts of it. There are the financial goals, like what you're saying. I need it to hit these financial goals. But then, as you said, what time do I have? It's your lifestyle, your life.
Yeah.
What does your life need? Your personal needs, your family needs. What do you need your business to do for that? Because it's really easy as entrepreneurs to let our businesses take over everything. I'm definitely have workaholic tendencies, and I love working. I love
Yeah.
and so that's also cluing into, like, for example, I've talked to some people about doing booths and they work full time, and it's like trying to help them see, like, it is set it and forget it, but also you get out of it what you put into
Sure.
it, and it's like it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It is still a lot of work, but it's so worth it. And I think the multiple revenue streams, like, I always think of it as no business is going to have like one raging river of cash revenue flow.
Yeah.
It takes all these little trickles to like join up and to create stable income. Because I get so nervous when I see people and they're only selling on Instagram, and they don't even have like an email list or any way of having a customer base. They're only selling in booths. If one of those platforms, or even just selling on Etsy, you know, because Etsy,
People have lost their shops overnight. They're just gone.
yeah. It is rare, but also
It happens.
you have to like to have a stable income. Having those multiple revenue streams is super important. So what are some of the differences that you would see, like, if someone is trying to decide, should I do an online store or should I do a booth? Like, what are some of the differences that you would point out to people?
Okay. So, a booth. Okay. Well, let me organize my thoughts here. Again, I'm tired. Let's get it all organized here. Selling online, you can put your stuff online and nobody will ever see it. It's just the reality. There's so much stuff out there. Just because you throw it, even on Etsy, just because you put it out there doesn't mean anybody's going to see it. Just because you build an online shop doesn't mean anybody's going to see it. Just because you post it on Instagram doesn't mean anybody's going to see it. All of those things, like, you are selling to a massive pool of people, but you have to learn how to market. You have to learn how to work with the algorithm. You have to learn how to drive traffic. Those are, I think, higher level skills. Like, you're talking some businessy type skills when you get up here. Like building an email list, understanding the social media algorithm and how to work with that. Like, you have to get people to come and look at your stuff when it's online. If you can open a booth space in a good mall that's getting the kind of foot traffic of your ideal customer, you don't have to do any of that. That work is being done for you. So I think it's a great, like, a booth is a really good entry level option for someone who is wanting to, like, they enjoy vintage and antiques and they want to give it a go selling, because you can do okay at it and never have to learn how to market your own stuff. Now, I think you do need to learn how to market your own stuff, but you can just walk right into it and benefit from the already existing foot traffic that's going to be there. If you want to sell online, then that's when, you know, they need to start following ladies like you guys, and you got to work it, right? Like, people don't just show up to your Shopify store, Whitney, right? Like, you got to get them there. And when I started selling fusion mineral paint, that was 2015, I think, 2015. It was a new paint on the market. I won't go down the painted furniture rabbit hole, but anyway, new paint around. I kind of jumped on it on a whim and applied to be a retailer. I think it was like $800 or something to sign in. And I was like, let's just see what happens. And like thinking they'd get back to me in a week or two. And it was like 24 hours later, I got this email and they're like, you're approved. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe I need to make sure I can actually do this. So I talked to the person at my mall and I'm like, can I sell this paint in my booth? And they were like, sure, sounds good. So I got the paint, put it in my booth. I already had a blog at that point. So I messaged the paint company and said, hey, can I sell this online? Like, I've got this, I'm already painting furniture, taking pictures of it. And they're like, sure, why not? So I was like the first person in the state of Texas, and I was like the first or second person in the entire United States to start selling this paint online. And I built this really clunky online store, you know, it was connected to my blog. It did not function well, but I sold like $40,000 of paint that first year in my online shop. And I was like, whoa. And the next year I sold like $75,000 of paint. And the next year I sold, and it just went, and it became a multi-six-figure store that I ran from 2015 until September of last year. How I built that was like, I built that audience on my own. Like that audience didn't exist. I went and I found those people and I built it by producing a ton of content around that product. I painted so much furniture and photographed the process and wrote these blog articles and created an email list and created social media. Like I created this pool of people. I could have just put it out there. Nobody would have come. Like I had to go find the people. And that's a product, like people have to understand, that's a product that is going to get used up. It's a consumable, right? So people are going to use it and they need more and they're going to come back. So there's a natural, really high volume to that. Okay. Selling vintage online is totally different. It's not consumable. It's not something that like, oh, I buy a painting. Oh, the painting lasts for a month and now it's gone. I need a new painting, right? Like it doesn't work that way. So anytime you're selling a non-consumable product, the volume is going to naturally be lower. That means you got to work really, really, really hard to convince people that it's time to buy more stuff from you. You guys wonder why jeans change style every year? It's because they have to convince us it's time to go buy new jeans. Like it's not, because we still have jeans from last year that aren't worn out. We don't really need new, but we need new when they tell us the old ones are out of style, right? Like you have to convince people it's time to buy something again. It's time to come back. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of content production, takes a lot of email marketing. It's just a lot of work. So I sold my online paint store to another paint vendor in September 2023. I decided I was ready to retire from that. And I built another online shop that is just purely vintage. And my volume in that store is minuscule, like compared to what the paint was. And at first I was kind of like, do I not know what I'm doing? Like, what this is a problem? And then it hit me like, no, this is just selling. This is a totally different world. It's just, it's a totally different world. And people aren't always looking for it. They don't always need it. It takes a lot of marketing skill, you know, to really build that. And I think especially if you're just starting out, like anything, when you're just starting to push the snowball down the hill, like you got to work really hard at it. And eventually it starts to pick up steam, right? So for somebody that's brand new and wants to go sell online, like expect a lot of work at the start. And like Nicole, I imagine when you first started, like you benefit from some natural followers. Now you've got people, you've been doing this for a few years, but it took you a while to get there, right? You can't just show up one day. You can't just show up one day and expect, I've got great stuff, it's online, everybody's going to buy it from me. It just doesn't work that way. Like 1 out of 100 people that wind up right place, right time. For the rest of us, you have to build it. And there's some thought and strategy that goes into that.
Sorry, I did a poll in my stories last week. Like, do you know I have a website? And 35% of people said no. Yeah. Which is really interesting. I've had a lot. Well, I mean, I have had some rapid growth over the past 6 weeks, but it was a reminder to me, like just because people follow me, they don't know all the things, they don't hear all the things. And the thing with online stuff is you have to build all those systems from scratch, everything from processor to your website platform. And even on Etsy, it takes, like, you have to put a lot of work into listing consistently every day. The best way is to list 3 things a day, 5 days a week, sell until you get high volume in your store. you get enough sales. It takes a long time. Whereas if you do have a booth system, you can focus on finding the right items and staging them, because the antique store has all the systems in place.
Yeah.
If it's a good.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think stepping into a booth is a lot easier for somebody who is brand new at business and has never done business ever before. There's almost no barrier to entry. Like, it's low risk. I mean, again, I started my booth for $250. It takes more than that to buy a year Shopify, get an email program. Like, that's more already. So, I think it's a great entry point for people. Online feels really sexy and it looks fancy, but it's a lot harder. It really is. It's a lot harder. I think it's harder, and I think it takes a longer time to build. So for someone who's just brand new and they're like, I've never done this before, like, find a small spot. It doesn't have to be big. It can be very small.
Okay.
And just do your best at it and give it a go. See what happens.
Okay, so the big question was, how do we know what a good mall is?
Yeah.
And I want you also to put a plug in for your course, because we're going to touch on a few things, but Melanie has developed an entire online course that I've started going through. It's so good about having a booth. Anyway, so I'm just saying, like, we're going to give you little snippets, but if you really want experience, you need to get her course.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, so the first booth I ever actually did was, it was a couple years before I started Lost and Found. I lived in a different state, different town, and a new flea market opened around the corner from me, and it was like super cheap. And I thought, because I'm cheap / frugal, you know, I'm risk averse, like I don't want to spend a lot of money. And I thought, oh, I'm going to give this a go. And so I rented, I think I had to be there for 6 months. And I made the cutest darn booth that you could. I mean, it was adorable. And I had all this great stuff in there. And the rest of the mall filled up with people selling old VHS tapes, old tools. It was unair conditioned. Like, the people like sat and like, they were running the checkout counter, like sat and smoked behind the counter, which, whatever, if you smoke, that's fine. But like, you can't do it behind the checkout counter. Like, when people are coming in this unair conditioned building, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And so guess what? I did not sell anything, because that was not my booth looked amazing and was so cute and had great stuff, but the customer that I wanted was not walking through that door. So it doesn't matter that it was cheap. I still lost money on it. So I think a lot of times people are tempted to find the cheapest space they can find, because, you know, that it feels, if you're a thrifter and a junker and a picker, we're naturally thrifty, right? Like, we're naturally look for the best deal. And so you're going to start out looking for the best deal. And that might be an okay spot for you, but just don't assume that that's the great place to start. Sometimes it's worth, and we've had this conversation, it's worth spending a little more money to get into a location. It's about getting the customer that you want walking through that door. And I, like, personally, I've always tried to appeal to what I call a shopper rather than another picker. And sometimes pickers are like, they cross over, right? But a shopper is the lady that's having lunch with her friends and hanging out and likes to spend money and has it to spend, and they shop for fun. And a picker is like, I'm trying to get a deal, I'm on the hunt, right? These people often don't try and discount your prices, right? These people over here are constantly trying to discount your prices. So I've looked for places that are attracting shoppers. Like, they're not creating this indoor garage sale vibe. They are like a curated home decor store with an antique and vintage vibe, because I think they're attracting the people that they're not going to the estate sales and the garage sales and the flea markets to find this. They don't want to do that. They don't want to spend their time doing, they're not interested in that at all. They just want the cute stuff to buy for their home, right? And so I'll go and do all that work for you. I'll go dig around the barn. I'll get up at 4:30 in the morning and drive an hour and a half to go stand in line in the rain to go to the estate sale. You don't have to. I'll do it for you, and then you pay me money that I did that work for you, right? Those are the people I prefer selling to. So I think to determine a mall, like, you really need to look at the customer base, who is coming through the door, what are the other booths they're selling. And I do think that it's helpful to kind of think about, like, I had somebody ask me the other day, I really want to sell mid-century modern, and every mall around me is like still really like kind of farmhousey, shabby chic, right? And I said, okay, like if that's your only option, go for it. But no, you're not going to benefit from the people that are already walking through the door there, right? Like you're going to have to do the work then of finding your own customer, of marketing your business, because they're not already walking through there. It doesn't mean it can't work, but you've made your job a little bit harder. So I'm a big believer in matching what you're selling to the vibe that the mall already has. And some places are really eclectic and appeal to a wide range of customers. Some are not, and they are very narrow. I do think it's tough to walk into a mall that has a narrow customer focus and try to do something off the wall. I think you're just asking for more work. So customer base, your ideal customer for what you're actually trying to sell, and then it's well managed. I'm not like I don't get hugely concerned about rents and commissions. If the mall is hitting all those spaces and it feels a little expensive, I'm not really concerned about the expensive part because I know I'm getting a lot of really good things up here. If it's not doing any of these things up here and it's really expensive, then I'm like, I'm not interested. So, and sometimes, you know, people have said like, there's nothing in my area. I don't have anything. Again, you have to decide what you want to do. I have known vendors that the mall that I sold in Texas was one of the best malls in the area. And some of those people lived an hour and a half away and they drove and sold at this mall because it was the right place to be. That worked for them. And that was a decision that they wanted to make. Hey, you know, maybe you're like, no, I'm not interested in that. Then that's fine. But like, you've got to, again, ask yourself those questions. What do I need for this to be? And it may be that you have to drive a town or two over. There's also options that come up. Like I've sold inside small boutique stores before as well, like not large malls, but a small store that was wanting a couple of vendors. And that worked out well. I had to pivot a little bit what I was selling, but I was still able to make it work and I still had a great revenue stream out of it. So those are all things that I consider. And I do think second to me, I think managing your inventory is the first key to having a successful booth. Second to that, I think it's picking the right mall. And in my course that I've taught, I've worked with over 250 other booth sellers, and I've seen many, many people have significant success after just switching to a different location. And they were like, oh, that was it. Like that was, and it may take 2 or 3 tries. Like I've sold in, I think 6 places now, and not all of them have worked. Some of them I had to go, yeah, this isn't for me, and it didn't work.
What about the location of the booth inside the store? How important is that? Because I feel like, so for me, I had a booth. So I opened my first booth a little over a year ago, and then I kept that for a year. In the summer, I opened a booth in a second store, and I just closed the first booth. We've talked about this, I know. So I moved on, and the first store was like the best place for me to get started. And then logistically with the drive, like you said, driving and stuff, I needed something that was logistically easier for me to manage. But I've been very fortunate because in the first store, my booth was in the corner of the outer ring. So if you guys imagine, think grocery store, right? You've got the sides and then all the booth in the middle. Mine was in the upper right corner. And then my booth in this new space is, again, outer ring along a huge wall, and it has a massive aisle, which means I have a little bit more flexibility with how much I can fill the space and push out. Yeah. But I'm going into the second mall to look at booths because I told them, I was like, maybe this is me being too picky, but I knew what I wanted. I was like, I do not want to be in the middle. I don't want, I want to be on the outer ring, and I'm willing to wait. And they just happened to have a booth space, and I was able to double the booth space. So I have most of one entire row. But how important do you think the location is?
I mean, when I started my first space, it was, this was an old building. This back half of the building had an upstairs that was low that you had to duck to walk around, and you went up these creaky stairs to get there. And that's where I started. And I grew from there. Now, when I got an opportunity to move downstairs closer to the front, I took it. And then when I got another opportunity to move right next to the register at a more premium spot with high ceilings, I took that. But I didn't start there. I started with the little jacuzzi bathtub spot that was upstairs on the low ceilings. So I wouldn't, if somebody really wants to start and all is available is a spot that, you know, maybe isn't so great, I wouldn't say, don't let that keep you from starting, but it does help. Like, obviously, like I just moved back into another mall. I also picked one on, saying, the outer ring, go right, first aisle. You're still hitting some light from the windows in the front, so I'm getting some natural light. And I picked that on purpose because I do think that's the natural flow of traffic. People walk in, they go this way because we live in America, and we go right, and we start going around, right? So yeah, I think you can be strategic in that. You want it to have good lighting. You want it to be in the natural flow of traffic, but sometimes you can't get those spots when you first start. And really, like, if you like get your foot in the door and show them all that you know what you're doing and you're a great vendor and you have good sales, and keep asking, keep saying, you got another spot open? You got another spot open? Here's something that I've learned over the years about getting into a mall. You'll go there and you don't know anybody and they don't know you, and you'll ask and they'll say, yeah, there's this waiting list. And the waiting list really is not, it doesn't really exist. Like, let's be honest. Most of the time, the waiting list does not really exist. It's like they went and tell the manager and they're like, yeah, I don't know who she is. And maybe they write your name down. Like, that's not how you get into a mall. You go back like over and over and over again, and you bring pictures of what you have to sell. And maybe if you're already on social media, you bring that and you show them that you know what you're doing. And if you know a vendor in that mall, you say, I know so-and-so, and you get, like, it is very much a who you know kind of thing, which I'm not saying is right, but that's been my experience. Like, I've been on a waiting list all summer for a mall that is 5 minutes from my house, and they've never called me, like, ever. And I feel like I'm a pretty big get. Like, they would be glad to have me. They've never, I filled out some sheet of paper. It probably went in the trash, right? The mall that I'm moving back into, I've sold in before. Again, it was hit by a tornado. I had to text the owner all summer long. Hey, are you reopening? When do you have a space? Yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah. And then I still had to drive up there one day and just walk in and go, Mike, do you have a spot for me? Like, yeah, I do. Come over here. That's what it takes. Like, just walking in and putting your name on a list isn't going to cut it. And so persistence, keep asking, try and work through, like, who are some people that I know? How can I get my name out there? And then if you have to take a crummy spot to start, I think that's okay. You will move to a better spot when you prove yourself.
Mm-hmm. I have also something else that my friends did in the local mall. So I have two friends who are local that they decided they wanted to start a booth, but they were hesitant to go all in. So they got a small space and they're splitting it. And our mall is actually it's the same booth and their stuff is all mixed up, but they have separate tags and separate dealer numbers. And so even that is a way, like, and I think the rent, they're each paying like something like $65 for rent because it's really small. Because someone had asked how to start a booth with minimal funding. I mean, buy low, sell high, find a small.
Yeah.
Oh, someone asked, why do you think it's a who you know situation to get a spot? Wouldn't the malls want to have the spots filled? Because the antique world is so old school.
Yes, that's why. Yeah.
It is run.
It's just, yeah. It's this weird little retail business. Like, why do they automatically discount things? Nobody else does that, right? Like, it functions by its own set of rules. And I'm not saying there could be some malls out there that have turned the corner and are better run than that. That's been my experience. Every place that I've gotten into, I've kind of had to talk my way in.
Yeah.
That's, you know.
And I was laughing the whole time you were describing how to get in, because that's exactly how I got in the second mall. I came on a list, and then a month later I call, and I'm a very extroverted, like, I engage people, I talk, I ask, like, that's just how I am. Like, I'm very outgoing. I try to connect with people, try to make myself memorable in good ways. But I'm just saying, like, if you just walk in and don't engage or introduce yourself and questions, like, try to, and this is true of anything in this business, whether you're buying or going to an estate sale, like, if you make friends with the estate sale employees, guess what? They're going to be, you know, they should be nice to everyone, but also you treat someone with respect, they're going to respect you back. And yeah, with the mall, like I called a month later, hey, do you have a spot? Yeah, yes. I went down there. Oh yeah. They weren't going to call me. They're like, oh yeah, we do have a spot.
Yeah.
And then when I expanded my booth to the booth next to me, I just asked them, hey, if that ever is open, I want that space. And they're like, actually, have it next month.
Right.
Like they're not going to offer it to me. And you have to be very persistent and like ask for.
Yes.
So
that's why I started my spot when I was my first spot when I was 6 months pregnant with my third kid, because I'd been on this ambiguous waiting list for a year. And I just happened to be shopping there one day and asked, and they were like, yeah, we have a spot coming up. And I was like, well, I'm going to take it today because I've been waiting around for a year and never heard anything. And it was like, I got to do this while I'm here. So it wasn't that I was just crazy and thought that was a great time to start. It was because you got to take it when it's there. Yeah.
True. So what does the workload look like? Like, what is a good working schedule for how often you need to be getting in your booth, flipping your, just like define, some people may not know what that means, flipping your booth. So just so we can get an idea of like how much actual in the store time, plus besides all the tagging and, you know, work we have to do at home, like kind of what that looks like.
So I think it's good, like if you can be there once a week and stop in once a week, that's good. If it's going to be farther away from you, you know, you may need to be more strategic about your drive up there, but I try to visit my spaces once a week. You know, some of the more successful vendors that I know, you know, have a goal to bring in 5 to 10 new items every week, because you're getting a lot of the same shoppers, like repeat, and so they don't want to just keep walking by and seeing the same things. So once a week, stuff selling, you know, so you're filling holes, you're moving some things around. And then, you know, like every 2 months, maybe, you know, 6 weeks-ish, you really give it an overhaul. Like take your big pieces and move this one over here and move this one over here. Because, we lost Nicole.
I don't know where she'll be back.
Okay. Keeping it fresh. Like there is this crazy thing about if you move something, it tends to sell. And so the more you can be in there moving, and those booth overhaul days, it's usually a full morning, full day. I've been in shops before where it's like once a month they give a vendor work night, and so you can go work where there's no customers walking around, and that's really helpful. But in general, that's kind of one day on my calendar each week. It's like I'm going up to my space, I'm taking some stuff, I'm checking on it, I'm moving some things around. And then every 6-ish weeks or so, it's getting a longer chunk of time where I'm giving it more attention.
My work night is tonight. So I'm like,
great.
I have a friend, and that's another thing too. Like, don't be afraid to ask for help, because one of the big things that I did when I got into my booth space was I had someone help me stage, because it can be really overwhelming. Like the design part is not for me. So I had someone stage my booth, and I paid her twice. She did my show and then she did my booth, and just working with her, I learned so much. And then now it's like, okay, now I know these basic principles that I would have taken me forever to figure out on my own. And I have a friend who kind of does VA work for me, and she also helps stage stuff because she's got great sense of style. So she's coming tonight to help. It's just like a little plug of like, if you have a friend who loves decorating their house or different things, like ask for help with the flip, because it's oh no, Nicole, I don't know what is going on her end. It can be kind of intense, but that's kind of my schedule of, you get out of it what you put into it. The people that do the most in their booth are there, honestly, a week, which for me was a big reason why I switched to the other mall, because it's right by it's at a place where I go frequently, and so I can pop in there like for 30 minutes or whatever. And again, I think like my mall has more than 250 vendors, 200. I mean, it's a big mall, but I've connected with a lot of the employees, and that also helps with just the communication and things too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what are some, as far as like income goals, like And this is so hard too, because, you know, people ask like, how much does it cost? Generally here in my area in Kansas City, the rent is between $4 to $5 per square foot. And then the commission fee can be anywhere from 5% to 15%. If you're down in the West Bottoms, which if you're in KC, you know, you have rent. $20 or 25% commission fee.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just a commission fee. So, and that, which is why whenever someone's like, Etsy is so expensive with fees, I'm just like, I don't know what to say to you.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, Nicole, is your computer working? Does Instagram keep kicking you off? Oh gosh. Okay.
Sorry, I have do not disturb on. My mom keeps calling me and I'm like trying to swipe away and then it wouldn't let me connect again. And then I guess I was like blurred here. So I tried to join again and it wouldn't let me because I was already in. Anyway,
I
sorry
turned
about
my
that.
do not disturb on too, and I keep getting, like, my kid keeps calling me. And so I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the world with that.
Mother-in-law just keeps calling me and I'm just like, I'm sorry guys. Anyway, okay. All right.
Focus.
I don't even remember what we were saying.
We were talking about, okay.
Like 3 times your rent, 5 times your rent. Like what is a reasonable like minimum? And you know.
Yeah. Okay, so I jotted down a little math here before we started. I'm a big numbers person. I'm a big believer in knowing your numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you have absolutely no way to know if your business is doing well or not. Most, in my experience, in the booth world and even in the online selling world and the vintage selling world, and again, most of us are just starting, like we're not seasoned business owners. I didn't know anything. So we just walked into this and we focus on this top line sales. Well, I sold, $500 in this live sale. I sold $3,000 in my booth this month. Well, that's fantastic. But that doesn't tell me anything about your business. It really doesn't. You need this number here. Like, you have to be selling some stuff, but this is all this other stuff that matters. So your expenses matter, your profit margin matters, the cost, like how much did you spend that $500 of sales that you made? What did those items cost you? What was the cost of those goods? And then that gap is your profit margin. What are your expenses? Like, are you losing money on shipping on your boxes, right? And so for your booth, it's like your rent, your commission. I will say here, I generally have paid $2 to $3 per square foot plus 10% commission. Now with this whole tornado business, like all the places that are reopening, I'm $5 at one and $3.75 at another. So it's bumping up, and that's the state of everything. So it's probably, I would say $3 to $5 a square foot plus 10% commission. 15 seems pretty high, but it is what it is. The numbers really don't matter, but what matters is that you have to understand where they are. Like, you have to factor them in, right?
And with that 15, and what's interesting, again, you look at your clientele and look what you're selling, because my mall is one of the most high-end malls in the area, and people can if you can price things to account, like what you were saying, if you can price things to account for that commission rate and you're still making a really good profit, that's worth it, because like you said, getting your pieces in front of the right people who can recognize the value and are willing and able to pay for that value.
Absolutely. So it takes money to make money. Like, that's just true. There is a cost to doing business. And so your job as your business owner is to make sure you're spending your costs in a smart way, that they're producing for you the results that you want. So I just ran some numbers on, I just threw this out. If you have a booth space and you're paying $150 a month rent on your booth space, and you sell on average 3 times, your top line revenue is 3 times what you've got $450 in sales. That's on average, okay? And then let's say on average, you're getting a 60% profit margin. So again, if you're not keeping track of your inventory, then you have no idea what your profit margin is. So I'm talking about you're writing down somewhere, you're recording somewhere what you pay for something and what you sell it for. And that's I get that that's tough because we're not like with paint. That was really easy for me because it was the same number over and over and over. These are different things over here. So it can be hard to nail it down exactly, but if you keep decent records over time, you can get an idea. Okay, in general, like if I mark my item up 3 times, that's a 66% profit margin in general, right? You can get an idea of roughly how that goes. So I'm just throwing out some numbers here. Let's say $150 a month booth rent. You sell 3 times what your booth rent is. So that's $450. You're working with a 60% profit margin. So that means for that $450, I didn't write these specific numbers down. That $450 that you sold, what you paid for that inventory, hold on, 450. I can't do math in my head.
Yeah, math is so hard for me.
I wrote down the final number. Okay, so what you paid for that $450 of stuff cost you $180. Okay, so you're going to subtract that out. Then you're going to subtract out your 10% commission off your top. So that's another $45 you're going to subtract out. And then you're going to subtract out that $150 of rent, right? So you start here with $450 of sales, take out your rent, take out your commission, take out what that stuff costs you. You're left with $75 of profit. That $450 produced $75. And then it gets real depressing if you go back and you add up how many hours you worked, like you're making like $5 an hour or something on that. So, and hey, again, if that's like when I started, like $75, that was fantastic. That went in my cash jar and I was excited about that. But that won't cut it for like reliable income, right? So how do you tweak those numbers? There's a couple ways. Like you can get more sales, obviously. You can sell, like if you bump that up to where you're selling, 5 times your booth rent. So that goes, then that starting number is $750. Everything else stays the same. And with that, you're left with $225 at the bottom. So you went from $75 profit to $225 profit by just selling more. But you can also get a better profit margin, right? Like let's go back, if you can get, I know these are a lot of numbers, but let's go back to that $450 of sales. If you can switch to where you're getting like an 80% profit margin, so let's say you buy, it only costs you, out of that 450, it only costs you roughly 20% of that, you're left with $165 of profit, right? So there's all these different things you can tweak. Your expenses matter. The cost of what you're spending on your inventory matters. The commission matters. The rent matters. Yes, and credit card fees if you pay them. So I don't, like my mall does not charge more for credit card fees. And my mall sales tax doesn't combine in there for, because the mall collects sales tax and pays it out. It's just a number, it comes in and out and doesn't affect my profit margin. My point is that all of those numbers matter, right? And everybody, we just get really focused on up here. I can't tell you the number of people that I'm like, well, how much do you actually make? Which is maybe a low class question that I shouldn't ask, but seasoned vendors that are selling a ton of stuff. And I'm like, how much does this really put in your pocket? And they can't tell me because all they know is they're selling $3,000 to $5,000 a month. They don't know anything else besides that. And you may actually be losing money. Like there's a possibility that you're losing money if your expenses are too high, if you've got storage units that you're paying for, if you bought too much stuff, like you could be selling $5,000 a month and not putting anything in your pocket, which is just a massive waste of time, right? So you've got to educate yourself on some of those basic, paying attention to some of those basic other numbers, which is not the fun part of running a business, right? Like who wants to do that? It's math and it's not fun. But if you want to be serious about it, like that's what it takes. And we do talk about that in boot camp. I hammer that over and over again because I'm convinced that like buying too much stuff and spending too much on expenses is what kills a lot of profit for a lot of booth owners. And you can have, like right now, I've had less sales in the past 6 months of my business, but I'm still paying myself the same paycheck because I tweaked these other numbers too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I call that like there's a mentality of where we're just trying to sell stuff or where we're trying to build a business.
Mm.
So if you're just chasing, well, I just need to sell. Yes, you do, but you also have to put, like, you got to know your numbers. You got to put some systems in place if you want to actually get to the place where you're looking at regular, stable profit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk about how each of us track our inventory. Like, how are we actually keeping track of that, especially if we have both a physical booth and an online website? Because we had some questions about that as far as how in the world do you keep track? How do you have a website in Etsy and manage? And this is a question, like how do you have a website in Etsy and manage inventory and your booth, all of these things? So, and especially because I think we all do it a little bit differently.
Yeah. So I'm old school. This is the way I've been doing it for forever. I'm a pen and paper kind of gal. And so I literally have like just blank Excel sheets. This is my running inventory. So when I buy something and I like write a little note about when it is, I write it down, what it costs, the price that I'm asking, and when it sells, like I exit off and I note where it sold. And so I can look back on here and I can find stuff that I sold on Etsy, stuff that I sold in my mall, stuff that I sold on a Facebook Live, and know what I paid for it and what it sold for. And that's just because it works for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for everybody, but it's worked for me. I don't list, if something is in my booth, it is not listed for sale online because you're just asking for a disappointed customer. Inevitably, it will sell in both places, right? So I pull my sheet is not numbered because my malls will not put in an item number for me. That's a good question. So I don't number it. I wish they would, but my old mall would put in an item number, and then I did have all of my items numbered. I don't now. I just, hunt through. I just make notes of kind of roughly where, like the time, like here's October, here's the things that I bought in October 24. And that's kind of how I go back and look through it. So it's not perfect, it's clunky, but it's, if I don't write it down, I don't remember. I buy a pile of stuff in an estate sale, and by the time I'm home, I forgot what I paid for half of it. Like I'm not gonna remember. And then I don't know what to price
That's when you just average it out. And that is also okay.
Yeah. And that can be fine. Like, again, sometimes we get so stuck into like, well, what's the perfect way to do it? Well, don't let the doing it perfectly keep you from just doing nothing. Then people just don't do anything. Mm-hmm. Like you got to do your best, do your best with it. Averaging it out can work fine. So there are certain things like I understand if I have a certain item that I think is particularly valuable, then I'll try to sell it online rather than in my booth because I feel like I can probably get the higher value price for it online. I don't like shipping huge things, and so there's certain stuff that I just don't want to mess with, so I don't list it online, but I do keep those things separate. And there's a question. Yes, I do get my tags back. Yep.
That depends on so my first store gave me my tags back. And I just got an email every day with what sold and then a weekly summary. My second store, I do not get my tags back, but they use the consignor website where I can log on and check my sales at any time. It's instantly updated. Yeah. They do enter not all the time. Most of the time they enter my SKU number, which is the ID number for each item. It's just figuring out how to fit in your booth sales with this.
My malls here are old school. Nothing is online. I don't get a report. I get a report at the end of the month.
Which is why, again, going back to like commission rates and booth rent and fees, sometimes if you're saving money on those things, it just means you don't get all the bells and whistles.
Right.
So, yeah. Nicole, how are you managing now that you've moved on to like, how are you, I know you don't have a booth space, but how are you managing the inventory?
So this is, I was like Melanie and I had like a notebook. So like I would bring the notebook with me if I went to like flea markets and things like that. And I would always put like the date, the total, how I paid for it, and then the items. So that became a little too cumbersome for me. And then I put it all into like an Excel spreadsheet. That way I could pull them, and then it was easier for me to like search for certain items and like, oh, okay, I bought this and I sold it, but I don't remember how much I sold it for. Let me go back and check. And honestly, this year I changed the way I do it, and I don't know if it's something that you should necessarily listen to me. But I was talking with my accountant, and he said he really just needs to know how much I spend. Really, he doesn't care if I spend $70 on September 6th or or on like each individual item. It doesn't really matter for tax purposes. So I've just recently been, this year only, I've been just taking like a loot shoot photo, and then I write down the total and I track it that way. So I don't necessarily individualize every single item that I bought that day, but I know that this photo of items was $70 and I use my credit card, so like that. But I don't have a booth. So I think I might think of it differently if I did. Then I would be able to use like a SKU number or something similar to how Whitney does it. But it saved me so much time from writing every individual item out and like how much I bought it for and the date of every item and things like that. But I'm like, I'm really anal with doing everything like online. So I feel like just because if I just have Instagram and Etsy right now, I just make sure I track it as well as I can. Like if something sold on Instagram, like if I pulled an Etsy listing for an Instagram live sale, I'll make sure to disable that listing before the live sale starts, just in case someone buys it twice that night. But I think I'll have to implement a different system moving forward if I do increase the volume or decide to sell in person, just to manage like having everything on multiple platforms.
Yeah, and like I want to comment a little bit on that, and then on this comment here from Raindrop Vintage, like your accountant is 100% right. Like he doesn't need to know what each item costs, and so tracking for like tax and bookkeeping purposes is really different than like tracking for knowing your business numbers, purposes. And so yeah, like there's and people are like, well, what do I need to know for my taxes? And it's really your basics, like it's the big hunks of money, like in general, all my expenses, and in general, what my inventory was. And so that's great that works for you, and you found some time, that's working for you, and that it saved you some time. And you're right, for your taxes, you don't need to have it all broken down like that. I track mine individually because I want to make sure that I'm getting the profit margin I need to have, like consistently over time, that I'm just hitting those numbers, because I know if I'm not hitting a high enough profit margin, there's not going to be enough left to pay me what I want to get paid from it, right? And so that's just a personal thing that kind of goes into managing my paycheck and my overall business revenue, and making sure that's healthy, and making sure that I'm not wasting my time. Like I don't want to spend a lot of time on something and make $2. Like then it wasn't worth, right? Like it wasn't worth it. And I'm just forgetful. So I cannot remember in general what something is, producing. So
I think with buying like multiple of similar items, especially, I'm just going to use like silver plate as an example, just because there's like, I have a ridiculous amount right now. And it was just so tedious to have to write like tomato spoon, $5, well, like whatever, however it all worked out. And then I didn't know how to identify that piece, like how to translate from paper to item. And I wasn't putting like numbers on items either. So it was it just seemed to be a little bit too chaotic for me. But I know like for other people, if that works, go for it. But I just buy a lot of like the same item over and over again. So like without physically writing with like a label on the item, I mean, if I say iron tone pitcher 6 inches, there could be 4 of them on my shelf.
Right.
So it was too much for me to keep up with.
Yeah, if you're buying the same types of things over and over and you know you're generally paying the same amount for them every time you buy them, like every time I buy an Einstein pitcher, I'm not going to pay more than this. I'm going to pay somewhere in here. And so I need to hit up in here. Every time I buy a tomato spoon, I'm not going to pay more than this. Then that works. Like that's kind of like my paint, like it's the same thing over and over and over again. So yeah, I can totally see that working.
We had the sirens come on. I think they're stopping now. So I do something different because I'm on Shopify. So I'm trying to read the comments. I'm on Shopify. I started off my business doing everything on a spreadsheet because my mom was from the very beginning, like just put it into a spreadsheet and that way you can automatically calculate everything. I'm really bad with numbers and I'm really bad with details. So the more I can automate all of my systems, the better for me because I don't enjoy it. I did enroll in a bookkeeping for resellers course because I'm just assessing like what is my weak spot, like what are some of my weaknesses as a business owner. And so I watched the first lesson and understood about 5% of what he said. So I definitely need it. I was just like, I don't know what these words mean. Anyway, but on Shopify, so basically on Shopify, I can put items on my website or I can mark it in the location at my antique booth. It has a space for the cost of goods, how much it sells for. And at the end of every month, what I do is I run the report of what my sales were for that month. And then my VA actually does that. So I hand her all my tags and because it's just one of those little things of like office-y work where it's like, I don't need to do this, but it needs done. So she creates a draft order within Shopify. And then she just types in the SKU numbers and pulls all those items over and creates one order for the whole month. She also deducts the fees. So what I get in Shopify is a final report of how much my sales were. So Shopify is kind of where I do the health of my business as far as sales and revenue. What I use for my bookkeeping is Wave apps. And if you guys want all of these, like all the platforms and things that I use are in my free starter kit for sellers. If you just type in starter kit in the comments, you'll get a DM from me with a link to get the starter kit. It has like coupon codes, it just has like all the things that I used to start my business. So just say starter kit. But Wave apps, it was free. Now you do have to pay, but I would totally pay for it. I was grandfathered in free. It's like QuickBooks Lite where you can connect all of your bank accounts because I have a business credit card. I have a savings account for my business, and then I have a regular checking account for my business because I'm trying to build up some capital for long-term projects and things that I want to do in the future. And then that actually can generate reports so Wave is tracking the money that's coming into my bank accounts. Right. So when I get my check from the bank or from the booth, right, it just says whatever, $500, $1,000, whatever. It is just like the gross amount. And so for my bookkeeping, that's what I need, but I can generate an account and it's been really helpful to see because I sell on Etsy, I have Instagram, I do coaching, I do all these different things. So it breaks down my revenue streams and also breaks down all my expenses. So I can see, because I'm a chronic overbuyer, like that is I'm working on that. Thank you all the trolls that came on my intentional clutter reel and told me how nasty my office was. Anyway, just nothing like a kick in the pants to get stuff organized. But for me, like being able to automate all of that and run those reports automatically were great. Also Shopify, if you're selling, your antique store should collect and remit the sales tax on sales for you. But I do have a large local customer base. So people in Kansas have to pay sales tax. Yeah. And I get that back to the state once a year. And so Shopify automatically generates a report that I upload to the Kansas Department of Revenue so that I know exactly, instead of having to find, because you have to break down all the tax jurisdiction codes, you have to know how much was Wichita, how much was sold in DeSoto. Yeah. Shopify does all of that for me. So even if an Instagram live sale, it collects that. And then at the end of the year, I just pop it in and it's done. So I think that if you're someone who gets really bogged down and overwhelmed by details, then finding ways to automate it and use online services. Even if it costs you a little bit of money, you are going to get that back times 10 in like peace of mind and time, and you can sell more stuff.
Right.
So
I use QuickBooks, like for my bookkeeping. I'm an LLC, and you have to have books for an LLC. It's just required. And so I do use QuickBooks, and I used to pay a bookkeeper, and I stopped because they got really expensive. Thankfully, they're simple enough now that because I ran a brick and mortar store, there was just a ton of stuff running through there. In that period of time, I could not do it myself. Now that my business is simplified, I can do them myself. And so I can run that profit and loss report every month. But something that I do think is helpful, Whitney, and Nicole, and that like I find a lot of people, especially in this creative business that we have, like they do get so bogged down with these numbers and tracking. And so it's like, well, I'm just not going to do it. So even like I sent an email out about this. I have kind of some automated emails that go out, and I talked about setting a revenue goal, and like a revenue goal minus your expenses, and there's your profit. And I'm like, now I know if you know anything about bookkeeping, you're going to look at this and freak out because it's too simple. And so you can get really wheezy with all of this, or you can, but like, if somebody is like, well, I just don't even want to start because everything that they're talking about makes no sense to me. You can start simple and you can go from there. So what I do to keep me on track on a monthly basis is I've got this little Google sheet, which is a fancy Excel file, and I have a revenue goal every month. So on one part of that Excel sheet is like the expenses that I know run through my bank account every month. So I've got my email program that I pay for ManyChat. I pay for QuickBooks subscription, just these, like my Adobe $10 a month fee, just these regular things that I'm using for my business. Okay. And then I will put a budget for inventory. Like this month, I'm going to allow myself to buy $400 of inventory. And that budget changes based upon what I'm going to need. Over the summer, I wasn't buying stuff, so I didn't have an inventory budget. I'll also put a budget. I sell paint, so I have to buy paint to restock. Those numbers will go in there. All of those numbers add up. That's my going out number for the month, right? I take that going out number and I match it over here with my coming in number. And I put in here, like, okay, if I make this much ad revenue, if I make this much on YouTube, if I sell this much online, if I sell this much in my booth, that gives me this, minus this, leaves me this, which is my paycheck, right? And so I know what I have to hit every month to get this bottom number that I want to pay myself every month. And it's not bookkeeping exact. It's not. In fact, it doesn't match my QuickBooks profit and loss like at all, because that's done in this accounting way. This is the Melanie, what makes sense to me. And so I know, like right now for this month, I can look and I can say, like, I'm $600 short at the start of November. I've got to figure out a way to generate $600 more of revenue this month. And if I do that and don't have more expenses that I don't expect, then I'm going to make my paycheck this month. And so that's something, and I'm happy I can kind of edit this file where it doesn't make sense for my brain and kind of share that with people. But like, that's not necessarily bookkeeping accounting, but it is like, it's a revenue goal. Like, to pay myself this, I've got to hit this if the month goes as expected. But a big part of that is I only let myself buy so much. I take out cash, and that's all the cash I got. And I don't spend any more than that because I don't need it. I don't need it for the month. And that's the thing that I harp on and I get a lot of pushback on, but like, hey, again, I pay a third of our family's monthly budget every month. I pay a third of our paycheck that pays our mortgage, puts food on the table. And so I've got to have that. And so I don't need a storage unit full of stuff. What I need is a paycheck every month. And I've been doing this for 12 years. And what I've learned is there's always more stuff out there. Like, there's always, every once in a while, there's something that I'll break the rule and I'll spend some more money. But 9 times out of 10, like, there's always more stuff to go find. Like, when it's time for me to go buy again, there'll be some stuff to buy. There'll be some stuff to find. I think overbuying Overbuying is just a really easy way. Like it's money that is sitting on a shelf somewhere. And it's like it leads into a lot of overwhelm too. And I see that on Instagram, like, oh, clearance sale, and then you're selling stuff for what you paid for it because you just want it gone. And then you spend all that time, right? And it's not producing anything. And so buying smart, and that takes it takes a little bit of thought and planning. Like, okay, what holes do I have in my booth right now? What do I need to go spend? What do I need to go find? This is coming, Christmas is coming up, I need to, you know, find some Christmas inventory. You got to kind of plan ahead and think about it. So I am gonna harp on that. And I get but I gotta buy it when it's there, and I understand that, I really do. But I'm also gonna say, sometimes I think it's okay to say no, and you go, I've got enough right now. I got enough.
Yeah.
That's such a smart perspective, though. It's like I need to implement some of that.
I know it's not fun. Like, it's not fun.
No, like I definitely need to establish, I guess, a monthly budget. I kind of have like a quarterly budget, but I really like how you break it down even further.
Yeah.
I think one thing where I kind of tripped up was when my sales I had really high sales in the spring. And so then I just kind of assumed that they would stay high. So I started buying a lot more inventory, and then the sales like bottomed out in the summer, and they haven't really recovered. I mean, they're kind of back to like pre-spring levels. But I have, there's so much capital. It's just sitting there, and it's stuff that is good, and I know it'll sell if I just get it out.
I talk about, like, I live in the land of this is like the home of Walmart. So like Walmart headquarters is like right at the street. And all the grocery stores here are Walmart. And then there's one local grocery store chain called Harps, which has started here. It's been here. And those are our only two options, places to shop. And my oldest son actually works at Harps. And their whole deal is we don't have everything that Walmart has, but we have actual checkers in the line that are friendly, and like he's trained to like talk to people and all this kind of stuff. It's like your little hometown place. Like, why would Harps go buy the same amount of cereal for their shelves that Walmart is going to buy? They don't need it, right? Like, Harps doesn't need to shop Walmart level inventory because they're not going to sell that much. And so many of us, like, we're buying Walmart level inventory and we don't need it. Like, any other business doing that kills their balance sheet, because the money kicks out the faster you turn it, right? The faster you buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. The faster that process goes, the more profit kicks out. So the only way to kick out more profit is start the process, like make it go faster, right? Every time you buy something and it sits for 6 months before you ever even get a chance to list it and sell it because you've got so much sitting there, that has slowed down your inventory turn, and it has slowed down the amount of profit that your business can have.
All right. Well, get away. So good. I love it.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize.
No, keep going.
It's what I think it's what most of us need to hear. Okay, it's 11:18, and I apologize if you guys can hear the sirens. So real quick, we're gonna touch, I know we've talked about managing the inventory between the two spaces. Really quick, I did want to talk about, we have a whole bunch of questions that I really want to get through. Real quick about your website. Talk to me about your flat rate shipping, because I had a question of how, because that's something that a lot of people, when they start selling online, it's like, do we do free shipping? Do we do calculated flat rate? So what went into your thinking to do flat rate shipping?
It was easy. It was easy. It was quick. Saves me time. I've been shipping for a long time, and so I know roughly what it costs to ship a box. And it's funny because people will go, how do you get such cheap shipping prices? I'm like, I don't. I pay the same ones that you guys are. Sometimes I'm paying $12 a box. So that means I eat the difference. I eat $6. But
do you account for that in some of the larger items that you're shipping? Like, just
yes.
to know what you're...
Yes. So I moved my profit margin up a little bit. But for me, it was just purely, I don't want to pre-package a box to figure out how much it's going to be and then have to unpack it for something that, like, I don't have the time to do that. And so I needed just a system that was going to be quick and simple. When the post office introduced ground advantage, like that was incredible, because it used to be that if it was over a pound, it had to ship priority. And so it used to be you couldn't ship anything big for less than like $9. And ground advantage has been a great thing. And so I'm also really picky about what I sell online. If it's going to be too big and heavy, I won't sell it online, because I know I'm gonna lose too much money on it. So, but that's just decisions. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, right? And so I wanted to make it simple. I also wanted to make it simple for my customers, so they're not wondering, if I buy this bowl from you, well, I live this far from you, and I don't know, and like the back and forth of it. How much is it going to be? In my experience selling online, the easier you can make it for people, like the more likely they are to check out. Now on Instagram, that seems to not matter. Like it kind of blows my mind. The live selling and the way that it's typically done, and the like back and forth on, I'll pack your box and I'll tell you how much it's going to be. Like, I've never seen anything function like that. It seems to work for people. But it wasn't I didn't want to spend the time doing that. So that was why I just picked a number. And most of the time, like, I'm pretty close to it. I'm pretty close to it. And then if it's a big item and I know I'm going to be $5-6 over, then I'll add $5 or $6 to the cost of the item.
Okay. And you're on Shopify, and you never use the calculated shipping on Shopify.
No, I didn't want to mess with it.
Yeah,
I didn't want to figure it out.
Her rates, what is it? Is it $5.99?
$5.99.
$5.99. And so you're very strategic about what you're listing. For me, because I am on Shopify and I figured out how to do the calculated, I just have so many local customers and I sell such a wide range of products. As I am moving away from shipping large things, because same thing, I'm kind of sick of it. But so there's different ways. You just have to be, and it helps that you're in Arkansas. So we're in the Midwest.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle of the country. Yeah.
It works really well for us. Whereas Nicole, I know we talked about this, guys. We did an entire episode on shipping. I think it's episode 3 or 4. And so if you look, once you guys get the replay link for the YouTube channel, you can go back and watch. It's like a 2-hour-long episode, and we break down shipping and everything. Episode 5. Okay. But yeah, it just depends on where you live. And when you do Instagram live sales, is it still the same flat rate shipping? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's just what I charge.
Okay. All right. I think, so, and man, I wanted to talk about YouTube channel, but I think we're going to run out of time. Tell us a little bit about your Booth Seller Bootcamp course, and then we're going to dive into this list of questions and try to get through them in the next 25 minutes.
So my Booth Seller Bootcamp is an online course that I actually put together back in 2017, and it was basically, how to take your booth from a hobby to a business. I learned that I was running my booth differently than most other people around me. I taught myself how to market on social media. I built an email list. I built multiple revenue streams. I was really trying to pay myself a regular paycheck. I was tracking my inventory, and I looked around and realized most other people weren't doing that. There was also, I think now it's gotten a little better, but back then it was really hard to get help from seasoned vendors. Like, you try to ask people, I was a new vendor, and they're kind of like, well, we don't really want to tell you our secrets. I think that's getting a little better. But at the time, that was kind of the deal. And I just thought, I don't like that. Like, I want to take everything that I've learned, and I'm going to put it out there, because there wasn't a lot. So it is 24 videos organized into 4 weeks. We used to launch it, and we would go through it live, and you get a video once a week. And now it's set up where it's just completely self-paced. So it's 24 videos, 5+ hours of content. We talk about what you need to get started, how to pick the right mall. We talk about managing your inventory, how to, staging, creating a healthy space. There's an entire week on social media, using social media to market and manage your business. And then the last week is about expanding into other revenue streams. And so it's really kind of comprehensive, and maybe every video isn't for every person, but kind of wherever you're at. I've had people go through the course that haven't had a booth. I've had people go through the course that were selling $40,000 a year already out of booths. And I've had great feedback to date. I've never had anybody ask for their money back. You know, if they weren't happy with it, they didn't reach out. So it seems to have been helpful. There's been another 250 class. Yes, so it's just, there's a question. I've had people not in the US take the class. Yes. Now some of the tax things that I share aren't going to work for you in Canada because I don't know how the tax system works in Canada, but I've had people take a class in Australia. It really is about thinking like a business owner. It's completely online. And so all you need is the ability to stream videos online. And that's something that, you know, I don't know if I want to, maybe we can put the link in the comments, or, you know, if someone can message me and I can share the link. The link's a little clunky because we rebuilt it on a platform called ThriveCart. And so it used to just be at bootsellersbootcamp.com, and we rebuilt it and we put it on this other platform called ThriveCart. So the link is not super clear, but it's in my, you know, up in my profile description. So, but that's what it's there for. It's designed to kind of help people who want to go from a hobby to a business. And it's just, it's like, hey, this is what I did. Like, this is just exactly what I did. And I'm not necessarily saying that's the only way to do it, right? But it's what worked for me. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback about it. And so I've enjoyed being able to offer that and have it out there.
That's awesome. Okay, yay. All right, we're going to hit all these questions. Last call for questions. Very bottom, right below Nicole, there's like a speech bubble with a question mark in there. You can drop your question in there, and we're just going to go through these. Some of these we already kind of addressed during this slide. I'm highlighting those yellow. So the first two questions kind of go along together. How do you gain a decent following for online shops? / can you have an online shop without a huge social media presence? I will put a plug in real quick. Episode 3 is Instagram 101 for sellers. So if you go back to episode 3 for Shop Talk, again, on the YouTube channel, you can watch that and get a lot of ideas. But how would you answer that? Nicole and Melanie, how would you answer that question?
I would say it's about finding the right people. You know, social media gives you access to a huge stream of people. Obviously, the bigger your stream is, the more fish there are swimming down it, right? The more chance you're going to catch the right fish. So having a large following definitely helps. But you can have a large following and they can be disinterested fish and they never buy. So it's a combination of finding people that are interested in your business and what you have to offer. I think right now there is a lot of everybody's kind of trying to fish in the same pond right now, and everybody's on Instagram, and they're just, you know, like, sometimes I wonder if it's like the same 200 people buying everything, and everybody's going after the same 200 people. I'm not particularly interested in that. I would encourage people, again, like, you might sell some stuff, but I don't know if that's building a business. Like, I think you really need to find people that are excited about what you are doing. And so you post helpful content, creative content, things that get people excited, and then you offer items to sell. That's how I built my business. I produced a lot of back end, just helpful content, and got people to be fans of what I was doing. And then I offered up the opportunity to work with me. And so they had a loyalty and a brand loyalty to my business. And so that doesn't have to be a huge amount of people, right? Like, you know, you get 100 solid people that love what you're doing. That's not, I'd take 100 committed customers any day, right?
Marketing.
Yeah. So, but, you know, you got to learn how to work with the algorithms. Like, social medias want a particular thing. And so if you're going to do it, get some help in learning how to do it in a way that's going to get you the results you want. I talk about, you know, social media is like, you buy a car and you want it to be reliable and get you where you want it to go, but then you don't put gas in it and you don't change the oil and it breaks down your driveway and you're like, what's wrthem? And it's like, well, you didn't give it what it wanted. So you got to do Instagram the way Instagram wants to work. You got to do Facebook the way Facebook wants to work. Give them the gas and the oil that they're looking for, and then they'll work for you. If you don't like that, sorry, like, they're free. What? That's how it works, right? Free advertising. You can't get that anywhere else. So learning how to work with the algorithms, I think is helpful, so that you're not just spinning your wheels. But looking for just those quality connections to quality customers, I think for me has been key and will help you grow kind of a long-term, like returning customer base, where you're not just out there constantly chasing new sales, but you've got people that like you and are here for you, right? And show up for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I think in the beginning, so I mean, we all start with zero, unless you have an existing account and then you decide to turn like a personal page and you turn it into like a shop personal page type thing. But I started out with zero. So honestly, like if you have those like home decor tours or like any type of like hashtag groups, I started out that way, and you would join those and then you get your feelers out there, kind of like you're like, hey, this is my account. Let me comment on people that have inspirational photos that you like, or think people that are in the vintage community, maybe other sellers too, just to kind of like be in people's faces a little bit more than just, I mean, otherwise, if you only have, like, say, 100 followers, how else are you going to grow? I would just say try your best to just like get out there, and like you really have to work for it. I mean, I remember the first like even 500 people were really hard to get, and now that more people are on Instagram selling, it's harder too to be seen in like the ocean full of fish. But don't be discouraged. Just, I would just say, just keep going.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with social media, it's reels. Like on Instagram, to be really blunt, if you want to grow really quickly and you really want to reach the right people, get really good at making reels. I gained, and this is not bragging, but it is just like I posted, I follow, talk about her all the time. Michelle Gifford had a Instagram reel challenge, and my growth had plateaued for like 6 months, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I made a reel every day. The only way you're gonna get better at it is doing it every single day and disciplining yourself and not giving up when you don't see results right away. That's the hard part, is doing that. And I think I gained over 1,300 followers in October by just getting it out there and creating the right content to reach the right kind of people and giving them value on Instagram. It's not enough to just be like, look at this pretty thing I'm selling. You really have to give them value, whether it's entertainment, education, etc. Like, offer value through your Instagram content, attract customers, nurture that relationship with them, show them what you're good at when it comes to antiques, and then sell. So and I love what you said, like, you don't have to have tens of thousands of followers, but if you are a niche person and you want to sell 19th century English majolica pottery and that's all you want to sell, guess what? Like, those people are going to find you, and you're going to have a dedicated customer base, because those collectors will come back as you offer more pieces. So that also goes into another question somebody asked. I thought this was really good. What are the pros and cons of niching down versus selling a wide range of styles? I think this is something, when you're first starting, takes a lot of experimentation, like figuring that out for yourselves. What do you guys think about that?
I think if
Oh, it
you're
took a long
selling,
time.
oh, go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
think in the beginning, well, it's harder to find. Oh, sorry, something's going on with the mic. It's harder to find what people, sorry, in the beginning, I was looking for things that people liked, that people were going to buy, because I saw it on other people's pages. This is hot right now. But over time, I realized that if I just buy things that I like and kind of convey my style to other people, then they might see like home images of like my collections and then be inspired that way. And then I could be a little bit more passionate about the items that I'm selling, because these are items that I would put in my own home. And then I'm not stuck with inventory that might not sell, that I don't like. Like, I don't think you should necessarily chase after the hot items at the moment, but just kind of like be true to your style and see how that goes. But it definitely took, I mean, it took probably like about a year and a half before I was like, I don't even like this. Why am I selling it type of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to come naturally to you right away. And if it does, that's great, but it might take a while to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I think for online, it can be very helpful. Like, again, online selling and selling in a booth space are really two different businesses. Like they function very differently. I think in a booth, you can, like I tell people, if you sell everything, then you're remembered for nothing. And so you do need to have a brand. That brand can be very, very specific. That brand can be pretty broad, but there needs to be some coherent brand. I've seen people that, only sell white things. That's very specific. I've seen people that their brand is eclectic, right? And that's a bigger umbrella, but there's, you don't want to have VHS tapes and milk glass and old shoes and a thrifted Louis Vuitton purse and whatever. Like that doesn't make sense. You got to have some reason, some hook for people to remember you. And I do think online, like again, we're talking about curating an online audience is just a very different skill set than running a booth space. This one over here requires some more intelligent, thoughtful marketing, I think. And I think it makes sense to niche down even further in that. And that's something that I have been, as I've transitioned from mostly selling paint online to selling vintage online, that I've been kind of working through myself. Because I still buy a pretty wide variety of stuff. Again, I'm producing content, and so like I make YouTube videos where I go out, like I have to buy stuff anyway because I'm making a video and I need to go buy things. And there's been definitely things I've bought that I'm like, I don't really know. Like I bought it because I thought I had some value, but I didn't love it, but I needed the clip for the video, right? So, and those are the things that I still have that are sitting there. So, yeah, there is a lesson, like just because you think you can make a buck on it doesn't mean that you need to buy it, right? I do think that if you're creating an online following, that it can help to be pretty specific about who you are and what you're offering, so that people can, they can know that they can come back to you over and over again for those items.
Yeah. Oh, that's all really good. I don't think I have anything to add. I do. It's a journey and you can be patient, but then don't be afraid, because I've had some people that are afraid to niche down because they're afraid of excluding customers. But I think that comes from a scarcity mindset where I'm afraid if I get too specific into this one thing, there are not enough customers to buy from me. But the beauty of the internet versus a booth is that the world is your oyster.
Yeah.
The internet has given you access to millions of people, and the more that you niche down and buy things that you're passionate about, that passion will come across to the right customers and will draw them in. So it's just, and like the purchases, they need to be like a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 where you're like, oh my gosh, yes, good price, I can make money, and I freaking love this item. Like I love it because it is so hard to, you are not excited about. Like,
yeah.
It's just, you have, that comes across, because people are not just buying an antique from you. They're buying a part of you. They're buying your home. They're buying the look, the aesthetic that you are bringing. They want, like, they're really buying into a story that they want their home to tell.
Yeah.
And so that's really important to like lock into that. That's part of marketing, branding. We had a branding episode, episode 6, that's really, really good. And so go back and like that should be one of the first ones you watch, is figuring out who you want to be online. So real quick, do you think the reselling thrifted vintage market is too saturated to start new? I mean, I always say no, that there's room, but I think going back to everything that we've said, you have to have like, what is your unique selling point? Because if you're kind of selling anything, whatever, chasing trends, it's going to be really hard for you to stand out in the crowd.
I don't think it's too, like, again, like you said, I try to avoid like a scarcity mindset. You got to ask yourself, what do I need to get out of it? Like, what do I need to, like, there is an element of right place, right time. And so you guys that started in 2020, like everybody was sitting at home buying stuff. And so you got a natural bump. The people that started YouTube channels in 2020 got a natural bump. I sold $12,000 of paint a month in 2020 online. because everybody was home, right? And so there was an element of like, so somebody starting right now isn't going to hit that because we're not in that weird time, right? So there is an element of right place, right time that some people just hit it and go, boom, right? And we don't have any control over that, right? So ask yourself, what do I need from it? If you need it to be regular income, then then I'm going to highly, highly encourage multiple revenue streams. I don't know that you can just hop on and do some Instagram live sales and pay yourself $2,000 a month out of it right now. Like, or you're going to be selling a lot constantly. Like that market has become pretty saturated, but maybe you can do some of that, and maybe you can open a booth, and maybe you can start a YouTube channel, and like, who knows? And then in 5 years from now, maybe you are making that, right? So ask yourself, what do I need? What do I need for this to do? If you're just enjoy buying and selling things and having a reason to go shop and put a little money in your pocket, then it's just everybody has something unique to offer. Like will be a reason why people connect with you more than me. Like some people are going to connect with Nicole, some people are going to connect with you, some people are going to connect with me, because we're all unique individuals. Everybody's got something to offer. But it is about going out and creating your own little customer base, instead of trying to just like, well, I saw somebody selling this, and so I'm going to sell it. You might sell some stuff, but that's not going to build a business. You really have to carve out a niche of, who am I? What do I have to offer? How are people going to become connected to what I'm doing? And at the start, you may see some slower sales, but you're going to build something that's going to last and have kind of a lasting return.
What do you have anything to add, Nicole?
No, I think that was good.
All right. Best tip for making a profit selling vintage home decor online. I think we've talked about this a lot, but just to make it clear, you have to buy at the right price. That is the one thing. You have to buy right.
Yeah.
If you don't buy right, you'll never make that money back. Doesn't matter where you sell it. If you pay too much, then you're killing your profit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how to convert, I thought actually this is a really good question, because I've had some friends struggle with this. Like they're selling on Instagram and then they decide to open a website and people don't want to click over to their website. What kind of suggestions do you guys have for those sellers?
I've experienced the same thing. I've tried for a long time to get people off of Etsy to my website. They won't, like, people have places they like to shop and they shop there. You can pull a small percentage of people, but I think you need to decide, like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to offer what you're doing? I myself personally do not do a lot of live sales. I want to spend evenings with my family. I want to be off work. I average maybe one a month. For me, it is just not worth it to give 2 hours. Like, it's just not worth it. And so I have just decided my stuff is for sale in my online shop. It just is. And I know, like, that means it's going to take me longer to get sales, because I'm not just constantly out there. Again, I'm not just trying to sell stuff. I'm trying to build a business. I could be doing 20 Instagram live sales a month and I would sell more, but in 6 months, I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to quit and I'm going to give up. Right. So there is an amount of hustle that you have to do, but you can't hustle for forever. At some point, you got to stop hustling. You got to have systems that work for you and your life. And so I'm 12 years into this. I hustled a long time ago. I'm done hustling. I'm done with it. So, for me, I work on driving traffic to my online store. Like, that's where it is. If you want it, that's where it is, over and over again. That's where it is. That's where it is. I feel like every time I do a live sale, I confuse people again. And so just being consistent. If you want to shop with me, this is how it works. If you want to shop with me, this is how it works. And then I still blog. I blog. I do a lot of stuff on Pinterest. Because that's a different group of people. And I have an email list that I spend a lot of time on. And Whitney, I know you do a lot of email marketing.
I'm looking for your email list sign up on your blog and I can't find it.
Well, That's another story. We're working on it. The pop-up was messing up the RPM ad return that I was getting. It dropped my ad rate way down. And so we've had to change the plugin. And my web designer slash husband, who works for free for me, it's taking a while to figure that out. So it is there. It is there. It's in my posts. And in my online shop, I don't have it connected yet. So
Okay.
yeah, it needs some work. But
I mean,
I just had decided that I'm going to use my social media to drum up interest, but I'm just going to be very consistent on, if you want to work with me, you got to come here, right? And kind of training the customers, like that's what I do. And realizing that means there's going to be some people I'm never going to get, but I'm okay with that because that's a system that I can maintain, long term.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, email marketing. I don't see enough sellers. I should just make a course for this. My number one way to get people from Instagram to my website is my email list.
Yeah.
So you really have to lean into that. That is why I am now creating a freebie guide, like that holiday gift guide is very strategically designed to get people. Honestly, my top goal on Instagram is to attract customers and get them onto my email list. That is like my main number one list because I don't own any of those Instagram followers. Right. Instagram gives and Instagram taketh away.
Yeah.
Plus Instagram, but it is on very shaky ground if you do not have an email list or, and you don't even have to have a website or an Etsy shop. But again, so that's why I have this entire system set up where people who just casually follow me, like my gift guide is free. You just have to give me your email address, join the list. There's a 15% off coupon inside the gift guide. And that has grown. I have, I don't know, over 1,700 people on my email list, and I don't blog or anything. And so that, and my return on investment for that is huge. And I nurture a lot more of my audience that way because I can get more personal with them, share stories, updates.
Yeah.
I need to create a welcome sequence and stuff. But that is something that I think more sellers could utilize. Like, it's not enough to post links and stories. I did a poll, like I said, what was it? 30% didn't know I had a website.
Yeah.
People are just seeing stuff on Instagram. They're not reading captions, but if you can get them onto your email list and then create that, because then your link is right in their inbox.
Right. And so you can, and that's a great point. If you use a professional emailing, and we're talking about purchasing an emailing platform, I think you use Flowdesk, right? I use ConvertKit. You don't have to even have a website. In those, like in ConvertKit, I can build a landing page. Yep. Like I do have, I have a wholesale shopping guide for booth owners. I have a monthly, here's what to sell every month in your antique booth. I have multiple free guides similarly that are just separate landing pages. Yep. With their own, URL that I can offer to people. And so if you're willing to invest in a good monthly email service, then you don't even have to build a full website someplace else. But yeah, you've got content, helpful content that you're offering. 100%. My husband runs his own marketing consulting firm, and email, he continues just to preach. Email is, for retail, just the most underrated. It's not sexy. Like, it doesn't look, it seems old fashioned, but it works. You send out, every time I send out an email, I sell something. Every single time I send out an email. And in fact, my online paint store that I sold, a lot of other paint sellers' stores were diminishing, and mine was not. And I think the reason that it wasn't was because I had such a big email list that I had built, and the other people didn't. They just relied on Google and Facebook, and those things dried up, and people stopped seeing links, and and I had built an email list, and that's what it does. It works.
And it's really not that much. Flowdesk, if you get the starter kit, or you can message me later, but I have a coupon where it's half off for the first year. So I think it comes out to like $19 a month, and that's flat. So it's normally $38 a month. It doesn't matter how many workflow automations you put in, how big your audience is, how many landing pages you create, it doesn't matter. It's just a flat fee, and it's like the best looking emails ever.
Yeah.
It's so finding something, like if you don't want to spend a lot of time designing emails, like MailChimp is like, sorry, they, I hate their email design template. Anyway, so it's finding something that you can use quickly. So, okay, real quick, have live sales significantly grown? Because we have like 5 minutes. Have live sales does having live sales help you grow your following, your Instagram following? Some, I'll say some, but not as much as creating content to reach new customers, like Reels.
I think it depends on who you sell with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you team up with someone that has a larger following, you're more likely to gain followers that night, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to stay or they might not purchase from you. But it might gain your exposure to new clients if you are selling with someone with a larger following.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that I've had more sales or more followers and attribute it directly to selling live. I think from what I've noticed, I have customers that are definite live sale people. They only really shop live sales. And then I have customers that like, nope, you can't catch me on a live sale. It could be because of family life. Sometimes it's during dinner time, depending on like where in the country you are, or they're getting their kids ready for bed, or just different work schedules and things like that. In a live sale, you have to be present at that moment for like 2 hours or so. Whereas like if you're posting things on your page or doing like a restock online, people don't have to have their full attention on your sale. So like a live sale, right, you can't really be hanging out with your family, watching a movie or TV or anything and shop because unless you have headphones in and you can really pay attention to everything. I think they're just different types of people that prefer, maybe they like to see the physical item in scale relationship to me and like how big it is and things like that. And they like to see it physically versus just photos. But I can't say if I have more people that would buy live versus stagnant posts.
Yeah. And if you,
I think they fit in an overall strategy. You know, going live on Instagram helps your algorithm. Like Instagram likes that, and Instagram does work well when you're collaborating. I do think that you have to ask the question. Like it takes a while. I think, to do them, to get a good return out of them, you got to do them a lot, and you have to be very regular with them.
mm-hmm.
And so you need to be ready to commit to a bunch and to commit to regularity and kind of training people to show up and buy that way. And so that just needs, if that works for your availability and your strategy, then that can be a part of it. I think I would encourage people to have a live sales strategy and then have other strategies as well, because I don't think like anybody that I see that's doing like 10 live sales a week, they just tube out at some point. Like they just eventually stop. Like nobody can maintain that for forever. And it does take a lot of time. Like you said, you're on there for a couple hours and you need to be asking yourself the question, how much money did I make in this 2-hour chunk of time? And you may get to the point where you're producing a decent amount of revenue. But just like, so I think it has a place in the strategy. But you also have to make sure that it's worth your time.
Yeah. And we have a whole nother episode, episode 4 on selling vintage on Instagram. And we talk quite a bit about live sales. That would be a really good one to look into. Okay. In Fire Rapid, someone asked, probably not going to dive into this. Someone asked thoughts about Etsy versus your own website. Can you talk about the startup process of your own online store? We did an entire episode on Shopify. It's episode 9. So I would just reference that and go back and watch that episode because we go into that in depth. Do you carry insurance for your booth?
No, I do not. I do have a blog article about that where I talk through the thought process on that and what you would need. But no, I currently do not.
I don't either. But I am an LLC like you, just to kind of like, if anything, if shelf falls on someone.
Yeah.
What do you do with inventory that doesn't sell after it's discounted? At what point do you just like donate it?
Yeah. I honestly don't have a lot that gets to that place, because I don't overbuy, right? And I don't, you know, there is a point at some time where it's like, I mean, this just is never going to make it. Like, I think that's the benefit of having a couple selling avenues, is that sometimes it doesn't sell over here, but it does wind up selling over here. And so, in a booth space in particular, I would say you just keep moving that thing around, and sometimes it takes a while. But I mean, almost in my experience, almost everything I've had in a booth like eventually sells. Like it does eventually sell. So, but you've got to like cut down the overwhelm. If you've got a bunch of dealing with the problem of I got too much stuff and it's not selling at or I've got stuff that's not selling at a discount and it's so much that I can't figure out what to do with it, that probably means that you're buying the wrong stuff and you're buying too much. So I would go back to the beginning and I would maybe change those things first.
All right. And then last question, we have this, okay, 1 minute answer. No. The reason there's a time rush is I have to go pick up my daughter from preschool, and I also need to like get the video uploaded before I leave. Everyone's like, why is she in a sort of rush? Because otherwise I'd be going for another 30 minutes. Okay, Mel, what is the one thing you wish you did when you first opened your shop?
Oh, I that's tough for a woman to answer. I don't know. I'm really proud of my business journey. I'm really happy of the way that it's gone. I started small. I didn't go into debt. I did it in a way that worked for my family. It grew organically over 12 years. I would say somebody that's just starting out, like maybe I could flip the question. It would be like, don't look at where people are in year 5 and think that if you're not there, then that means it's not working. Like, it's okay to start small and let something grow so that you can learn what you're doing, right? And like, it's okay to not know everything before you start and learn as you go. When I started shipping paint, I had no idea what I was doing. And I had to figure out how to ship a liquid that would sometimes leak through the US Postal Service, right? So be gracious with yourself, be okay with starting small, and just don't go into debt. Like, don't spend so much money on put a bunch of stuff on your credit card and pile up stuff in your garage, so then your spouse is frustrated and your kids are like, Mom, get rid of all this stuff. Like, just be okay with it being a small thing that grows organically and learning as you go.
That is like a fabulous way to end. Thank you, Melanie, so much for this morning. It's been so good. And we will have the replay up shortly, and make sure that you go follow her on Instagram and check out her boot camp course if you're interested in that. We will be back next month for Shop Talk. I don't know the date, but the first Wednesday of the month. And we'll be, Nicole and I will be doing like end of year recap kind of business chat. It'll be really good. So have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.